our last lesson that we're going to do in our book, lesson 13.5. Okay, we're still going to have a quiz. And this lesson talks about measures of center and measures of variability. So we're kind of combining some of chapter 12 and some of chapter 13. So before we look at the lesson, I just want to kind of go over those measures of center and measures of variability. If you remember, in chapter 12, we talked about measures of center, which is just when we take a data set and we pick one value to represent the whole data set. Okay? And so sometimes for measures of center, we'll use the mean, which is like the balance point, the fair share. Okay? Sometimes it's more appropriate to use the median. If there's an outlier, boys and girls, that's going to make it, the mean, seem not what it should be. And so in that case, the median would be a better number to use because it's just whatever's in the middle. Okay? Or sometimes we might have a data set that a number is used a lot. And so it best represents the data set. And that's called the mode. Okay, so those are all the measures of center we talked about. Okay, measures of variability are measures that we've talked about in chapter 13. And they tell us how close our data set is or how much it varies. Okay, so a graph we can use to show measure of variability is a box plot. Okay, we can use the mean absolute deviation, which tells us how close or how far apart our data values are from each other. Okay, the range tells us the difference in our data values from highest to lowest. And then the interquartile range tells us just what that middle part of our data looks like, that middle 50%. Okay? The interquartile range, boys and girls, should be used if we have an outlier. Okay, if we have a number that's a lot more or a lot less, it's going to make it seem like our data values are really far apart, when actually, because of that outlier, maybe they are pretty close together, but that one number is making it seem like the data varies more than it should. And so in that case, it would be better to use the interquartile range. Okay, so our lesson today is focusing on which measure of center would be the best to use and why. Also, which measure of variability would be the best to use and why. Okay, so if you want to follow along in your book, we're doing lesson 13.5, and it reads this. Thomas is writing an article for the school newsletter about a paper airplane competition. In the distance category, Kara's airplanes flew 17 feet, 16 feet, 18 feet, 15 feet, and 2 feet. Should Thomas use the mean, median, or mode to best describe Kara's results? Explain your reasoning. Okay, so before we can decide, boys and girls, let's find each of those. The mean, the median, and the mode. Okay, so the mean, we're going to add all those data values together. 17 plus 16 plus 18 plus 15 plus 2, and we're going to divide by 5. So adding all those together, that is 68 divided by 5, which is 13.2. Now, looking at my data values, boys and girls, one thing that jumps out to me immediately is all of them, except for this one, is greater than 13.2. And I want you to think, why is that? Why did the mean make it seem like the data values are smaller than they are? Okay, hopefully you're recognizing, ding, 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 right there. That 2, that's an outlier. That was a bad airplane throw, right? Okay, so we would say the mean is probably not our best measure of center. Okay, now if we find the median, we're going to put all of those in order from smallest to biggest. So 2, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so finding the one in the middle, 16. Okay, the median is 16. And as we look at those boys and girls, there is no numbers that are repeated twice. So we would say there is no mode. Okay, so if there isn't even a mode, then obviously we can't use that one either. Okay, but the median actually would be the best measure of center for this data set, because when we use the median, boys and girls, that outlier, it's just automatically discounted. It's just a finger move, right? And so we would say that in this circumstance, because of the outlier, the median would be the best measure of center. All right, so now boys and girls, we're going to talk about measures of variability. And the graph that we talked about for a measure of variability was a box plot. Okay, so our next example asks us to draw a box plot. And it's talking about the prices of the book at several different sites. The table shows the results, make a box plot of the data, then use the plot to find the range and interquartile range. Which measure better describes the data? Explain your reasoning. Okay, so here's my information, boys and girls. We've got 7 different sites, and this is the price of the books. Okay, now when we create a box plot, there's 5 different values that we need for our box plot. Okay, we need to find the middle, the median. We're going to find the middle of the lower half of data, the lower quartile or the first quartile. Okay, we need to find the middle of the top, which is the upper quartile or third quartile. And then we're going to use our smallest value and our greatest value. Okay, so I'm going to start, boys and girls, by putting that data in order from least to greatest. Now, I don't love the way our book did this because they have those 4 and then these 3 on the next line. That's hard. Okay, so I'm just going to write it, boys and girls, all out right here from least to greatest. So my smallest data value is 5. And then I have 15, 16, 2 17s, an 18, and a 35. Right? Okay, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's my 7 data values. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to find is I'm going to find the middle, the median. Oh, right there, 17. Okay, remember, I like to circle it because it kind of chunks my data into 2 halves. Okay, now I'm going to find the middle of the bottom half, which is right here, 15. And the middle of the top half, the upper quartile, is 18. So our median was 17. The lower quartile was 15. The upper quartile was 18. And then I need my largest value and my smallest. So we're also going to use the 5 to draw our box plot and the 35. There's my 5 values. Okay, so I go down to my number line. We're going to put a dot on 5, a dot on 15, a dot on 17. Ooh, that's pretty close together. A dot on 18. Ooh, super close together. And then a dot on 35. Okay, the 3 middle boxes, or the 3 middle dots, that creates our box. And then these are our whiskers. All right, so let's talk about that box plot for just a sec. Boys and girls, the box, tiny, super scrunched together, which means those data values, that middle 50% of our data, super close together. And then we got these pretty long whiskers. Okay, pretty long whiskers means spread out, but also, ooh, those might be outliers. Okay. All right, so let's go back to our question. It says, use the box plot to find the range and the inner quartile range. Okay, so the range, boys and girls, is our highest value, which is 35, minus our lowest value, which is 5. So our data values have a range of 30. The inner quartile range, though, is our upper quartile, right there, is 18, minus our lower quartile is 15, which equals 3. Okay, so that middle 50% of data, that only had variability of 3. That's not very much. Okay, so let's think about this. We're at a bookstore. Okay, the least expensive book is $5. The most expensive book was $35. And then we had quite a few books, all of these in the middle, that were within 3. Okay, so if I had to pick a measure of center to represent this data, if somebody said, you know, on average, about how much do those books cost? Okay, I'm not going to tell people that the books cost $5. Okay, that's not going to be accurate. And when they go to see, they're going to be pretty unhappy, right? We would tell people, boys and girls, that the books, they range between like $15 to $18. That's where most of the books are. That box plot is tiny, scrunched, okay? And then when people go to that website, they're going to see, oh yeah, okay, these books are about $15 to $18. Okay, so we would want to use the inner quartile range because of that. Okay, all right, if you need help today, boys and girls, reach out to your teacher.